Hello everyone and welcome to our YouTube character profile upload for Emily Bishop / Nugent.
Miss Nugent?
Yes, that's right. We did the... Oh God, when did... I can't remember.
I actually haven't got it.
We definitely did this before we watched older episodes.
Ages ago.
And it's sad.
This is done when Emily was still in the programme.
We need to redo the whole thing.
We originally recorded this, I think it was...
A year?
Yeah, a year or two before Emily left the programme. And we were kind of down on Emily at the time, weren't we?
Well, yeah, we didn't appreciate her, really, I don't think. And now I've gone back and I've seen some of her episodes. Classic Mannequin Parade one, brilliant. I think that she is very underrated.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah, so we'll come back and talk about a little bit more about that at the end because, like I said, she did a little bit more after we did the profile about her. So we'll just finish off her story and then maybe talk about a few things that maybe we'd like to correct ourselves.
So listen to this and
highly critical.
Just know that if you never change your opinion on anything, that means that you're boring. And we're not boring, are we? So we're going to completely disregard everything we're about to say. Okay? Here you go.
Set the facts.
Character profile time, and it's another epic this week. I've been waiting to do this character for a very long time, but there's not been any opportunity. This is Emily Bishop this week.
Emily Bishop, you say?
Yes, she's a mainstay of the show. She has been in it for so many years, but so infrequently. I mean, sometimes she'll pop up, and it's not like I don't know whether we're ever going to have another properly Emily-centric storyline again. But I think a week where she's in pretty much every episode is the best we can hope for. So for that reason, we are celebrating and looking back on the life of Emily Bishop this week. Now, she was born on the 18th of October 1929 to James and Agnes Nugent. They had a bit of a large family.
They all did in those days.
Yeah, they did. Edgar, Nora, Brenda, Joan and Marjorie were all of her siblings. And I quite like Joan's surname there. Her sister Joan is called Joan Corrie. I don't know whether that's an in-joke or anything, or whether they even had such thing as in-jokes back when that was...
Probably not.
Probably
they didn't
not.
invent humour until 1952.
This is after 1952, though, isn't it?
Well, it was still pioneering, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, of course. She got married twice, once to Ernest Bishop in 1972 and then again to Arnold Swain in 1980, although it was annulled later because it turned out he was a bigamist. Now, Emily had two kind of first appearances. The character was first on in the 21st of December 1960. Although she was an uncredited walk-on actress, but she was playing the role of the person that Emily would soon become. And then the first time that Eileen Derbyshire was in the show was on the 27th of January 1961. So she was so close to being in the beginning of Coronation Street. So she is just literally snapping at William Roach's heels as being the longest serving soap actress. But she never seems to get the
actor.
Well, yeah, she is the actress. Sorry, yeah. But she doesn't ever seem to get the credit, does she? Because everyone always talks about William Roach, who's been doing it for so long, Will Roach this. But Eileen Derbyshire doesn't really...
She's not She takes their money and goes, doesn't she?
Well, she never really does interviews or anything like that. She wants to stay out of the limelight, doesn't she? She's been in about 3,220 episodes since then. Like I said, she's the second longest running current character. But she's only the fifth most featured character in the history of the show. I think there's likes of Gail and a few others that have been in more episodes. So she's
played by Eileen Derbyshire, who is also the voice of George in Rainbow.
What? No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Why are you saying that?
Same voice.
No, she doesn't. That's a weird thing to say.
No, it's not.
She was approached by Granada for this role in 1960. They wanted her to be in it in December when they had this this walk-on actress playing it. I think when we looked on Corriepedia, the person who played the Emily character first is like an unknown character. Nobody knows who it is.
Actress.
Lost actress, lost to the annals of history. But anyway, Eileen couldn't do the job then because she was in a Christmas play. So she was told she could either wait 4 weeks until a new family was announced, or she could take on the part of a shy worker at the mission hall, which is what she did. Emily's first appearance...
What a fateful thing. What a fateful thing.
It is very... Very interestingly, she wasn't even given a first name until 1962, so she was in it a whole year, all only being Miss Nugent. because she was just like the secretary kind of
Yeah, because
character.
women didn't need first names, did they?
Not back in those days.
No.
They,
They don't even need a surname either, because it's not even their surname. They just get the dad's one and then get her married and take another one.
Yeah, well, she was Miss Nugent back then, and she was even called Miss Nugent by the people that knew her up until like 1969. Yeah, I can kind of understand it, like being a secretary, just being called by a second name. I can imagine them doing. Even now, they might do that. You don't. If you're like just a secretary, then you might not think.
What, your people at work would call you Miss Nugent?
No, I'm just saying.
It's a bit of a weird thing to be called, isn't
Well, I
it?
suppose,
You wouldn't
no,
like
but
to
it's
call
like in
Miss
the
Nugent, would you?
No, I would not like that. In the olden days, I can imagine like them just
In
thinking
the
of
old
her.
days,
She's just
yeah.
the secretary, so that's who she is. So she was born in Harrogate, was Emily, in 1929. But in 1940, her mum died, and Emily had to bring up her sisters for the next 11 years because her dad was not giving her any
And she
support.
had to go and fight in the war as well.
No, she didn't. You're making it up again.
She did. She helped invade Berlin during
Gemma's
the
making it
final
up. Don't
days of
believe
the Second
anything
World
she
War.
says. Don't believe her, listeners.
She discovered Hitler's charred corpse in the bunker.
No, she didn't.
I don't know why they didn't put that in. That's quite significant.
Well, we don't know what she did in 1945, but what we do know is
Exactly, that is my point. It's classified.
1961, she had her own baby linen shop, which isn't exactly the next step on from finding Hitler's child.
Do you know what? It's so sad. If she had kept that baby linen shop, right, and I presume she's making clothes.
I think so.
Can you imagine? Like she could have had a baby
Empire.
Yeah, baby clothes empire. She's like Carla.
Emily's had quite a lot of jobs, actually, it turns
They all
out.
have, haven't they?
Yeah, could keep the
Are
storylines
we the only
interesting,
people
doesn't
that
it?
just get a job and do it for the until we get
Do it
kicked out?
forever. She was also doing secretarial work at the time at the Glad Tidings Mission Hall,
I love that
working
name.
with Leonard Swindley, who
Love
was
that name as well.
Arthur Lowe.
Yeah.
Although they were only friends, Emily's father was keen that they marry because Emily was getting on a bit by 1961. She was 31 years old, and you need to be married by then, especially back in those days. But he was like 15, 20 years older than her or something.
More money.
Later on in 1961, her baby linen shop faced closure, but Swindley proposed that it merges with his draper's business. But then that ended up running into financial troubles, and they had to sell it on to Gamma Garments, but he stayed as manager. So, 1963, Emily was threatened with a sack because the shop had low takings, but neighbours rallied around and started shopping at them more so that she could keep a job.
That's
What a lovely storyline that was.
1964. She proposes.
Yes, it was a leap year in 1964.
To Leonard.
She took advantage of it.
That is acceptable. Later jilts him at the altar when she realises that she doesn't actually love him.
Yeah, I think it was a bit like she was really listening to her dad and kind of realising I should get married, and she was so kind of the unmarried, kind of the innocent spinstery type that she and sort of a very buttoned up Christian kind of woman. She didn't like going the dating game. Exactly.
Quick. Your dad's gonna die soon. You've got to get married.
Who else could there be apart from this man that I work with that we get on quite well with?
Exactly.
But yeah, she jilted him in the end, and I think in the end he kind of was like, yeah, fine, we don't love each other. They realised. So, but he left Weatherfield in 1965, and then Emily took on his role at Gamma Garments and the Mission.
Yeah, in 1967, she moved onto the street. She lived there for the first time, and she moved into the corner shop flat. Now, she gets a bit of a makeover, or her shop does. I don't know.
She gets a bit of a makeover that year. She went away for a bit to look after her dad, and then she came back and she got a bit of a makeover because I think it was like Lucille Hewitt and some of the others who were working with her wanted to get more teenagers to go to Gamma Garments, and having Emily, you can imagine what Emily would be like back then, isn't the kind of person that would encourage the youths to go and buy there. So she had a bit of a makeover.
She looked like Twiggy.
Probably. And she also joined a dating agency where
Do you know who Twiggy is?
I do know who Twiggy is.
I'm just checking.
She met a farmer called Frank, but then she ended the relationship when she found that his farm was too hard to work for, and apparently she found the cows too scary. So I think that's something that she and Deirdre have in common.
I was going to say, and Ken.
Yeah.
They don't trust cows, do they, these northern types?
No.
Nice, because it's very rural and pastoral down here. Very, very soft, gentle landscapes. The cows are more chilled out. Up north, it's more craggy and rocky. In 1968, she had a brief fling with a Hungarian demolition expert called Mikos Zadek. but she would not have sex with him as they are not married. But
They did anyway.
which
Went up
is
to
normally
Scotland.
called rape.
They went up to Scotland. She knew that probably if she went on holiday with him that they would end up bonking. And she did, so that's who
I
Emily
cannot
Bishop lost her
imagine
virginity
that
to.
happening.
A Hungarian demolition expert.
Blew his way through that, didn't he? She moved into the Rovers and lost a job at Gammon Garments when it closed because of bankruptcy, and then she gets a job at Ernest Bishop's camera shop.
And that is where the
Love
romance
at first
blossomed.
sight. 1971, she heard about a proposal to open a mail-order warehouse on the street, so she organises a sit-in protest.
I think this is the first instance we get of Emily joining in a protest, because everyone kind of remembers the Emily up a tree thing from the 90s. As we go through the character profiles this week, we'll get to see that she was actually quite an activist all the way through her life, which is quite funny, because I know she likes to stand up for her principles, but she's so like shy of retiring that when she
little
wants
old
something,
lady used to tell you what, don't stand in their way.
I know, she's like your nan, isn't she?
Yeah,
she fights
watch
for
out.
things. Yeah, when she believes something, she really will fight
Yeah,
for
you
it.
won't get around her.
Although at the end of the day, she this sit-in protest failed, and she ended up getting a job in this mail order warehouse anyway, so she didn't stick to her principles too much.
No, if you can't beat them, join them.
Well,
Which is one of my favourite sayings.
Yes, that's what she did. She also joined Ernest Bishop in Holy Matrimony over the next few years as well. So they, like I said, love blossomed in the camera shops. But things were put on hold that year in 1971 because he went to Spain and took photos of topless models there, and he got arrested. He was a very keen photographer.
Okay,
it was the art.
When you say topless models on a beach, was it just random people just on the beach, or were they actually there to be taken?
It didn't say when I was
Because
making the
there's
notes.
two very different situations.
Well, the fact that he got arrested for doing it makes you think there has been something a bit dodgy or some kind of misunderstanding or something. I don't know.
Some kind of comedy,
it didn't
Spain,
say when I was reading about
language
it.
barrier thing.
Exactly. Well, he was back by 1972 anyway, and they got married, and sadly she had a miscarriage that year. Emily never had children in the end. I kind of quite like Emily to have children. I mean, she's got all the sisters and
Bit
brothers,
late now.
but
It's too late.
well, it is a little bit late now. Yeah, she's got sisters and brothers. And we've obviously got Spider as her nephew, but it's kind of sad to think
To me, she is the quintessential spinster woman.
Yeah, it's just a bit sad that once she's gone, that's going to be the end of the Bishops.
I know. She is kind of like a great aunt, isn't she? She totally is, like, who never had kids.
Yeah, it's sad to think that was. I mean, I hope Spider could come back into it. I would have thought that when they do eventually write Emily out or whatever happens.
No, she's never going to be written out. No.
Or whatever happens, because she's not going to be in it
She's
forever.
No, she will be.
I think they'll bring Spider back then. I think they'll have to, and that could be Toy coming back as well. But anyway, what else happened? 1973.
It's going to be Robo Emily.
There's another weird storyline. So Ernest took on Rita as a rep, and this put Emily's nose out of joint a little bit. So she tried to prove her worth by photographing strippers. Because she knew that Ernest liked that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Can't believe that she would do that. 1974, their marriage was getting a little rocky. Emily suggested that they register for foster parents, so they have a few children for a little bit, but had to take them back, give them back in the end. Dad came and picked them up. So I don't know why their marriage is a little bit rocky. I think because I don't know the character of Ernest at all. I've never really seen any episodes with him in. I imagine him being fairly kind of mild mannered as well. But
who are these people?
Do you know what Ernest Bishop
looks
like?
No, but I don't know anyone in real life who you could describe as mild and shy and retiring. Do you?
No, not really.
Anyway, in 1976 they have money troubles, and then Mike Baldwin comes along with Baldwin's Casuals, and Ernest gets a job as a wages clerk.
Yes.
But in 1978, he gets shot and killed during an armed raid.
Tragic. And
friends and family rally around to support Emily, and she goes to court and sees the culprits receive their sentence and takes a job in Dawson's Cafe on Rosamond Street.
Yes, that was a separate story. You made it sound like just going to go and see you get my
it's
sentence.
the episode where the judge said, yes, I sentence you to prison, and that woman there, would you like a job in a cafe as compensation?
So this Dawson's Cafe that Emily took a job in charge of was the one that eventually turned into Jim's Cafe, which eventually turned into Roy's Rolls. It had its roots back in the late 1970s. It's a long time ago. So well, she didn't stay there working there for long. She sold it to Jim and Alma Sedgwick in 1980. And then Emily's main storyline that year was when she met Arnold Swain, who they very quickly fell in love and got married, but not in a church because he wasn't religious. And I was quite surprised to see that. I couldn't believe that Emily would actually marry a non-Christian.
It's not a case of sort of not wanting to, mix with people that don't believe in that. It's just completely different ideologies. It must be difficult.
I just can't imagine Emily wanting to get married but not get married in a church. I would have thought that maybe she'd be like, well, let's get married in a church, or let's have a register office, and maybe they had a blessing or something.
See, it's kind of strange when people say, I'm not religious, I only get married in a church, if the other person is. Just because it doesn't mean anything to you. Yeah. I can understand if you're an atheist and you really do, you have a strong aversion to it and you find the idea offensive. But if you are just not religious and you don't see the point of it, surely you can understand it's important to...
Yeah.
But he was a wrong'un anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
Well, he was, because he was already married, wasn't he?
So that's why he wasn't bothered. He probably knew that if he went into the church and got married, he would burn alive.
Yeah, he thought, yeah, exactly. As soon as he walked over the threshold,
that's literally what
the holy water would...
You go,
psst. Exactly. Well, it turns out that he's already married to this Margaret woman, but he says, "Oh, it means nothing to me. Oh, we were only married for 3 weeks, and then she was horrible, and so I left her." But Emily wasn't having any of it. She chucked him out. But she had to go into hiding the next year because Arnold returned in 1981, a little bit deranged, and then tried to get Emily to join him in a suicide pact. And I think he had gone a little bit religious by then, because he was trying to say to her, it says in the Bible that this is what we should do. And so Emily is like, no, it does not say in the Bible we should do this. You show me where it was. And I think he went upstairs to go and get a Bible, and then she used that I think that's what happened. She used it as a chance to escape.
She's not stupid.
No, she's on the ball.
She probably even knew exactly which passage and what page it was.
So he was arrested, and he died in a psychiatric hospital later that year. So 1982, she took over Ernest's old job in Baldwin's Casual, so she was the wages clerk there for a bit. And then just through the 80s, I think she was just, I don't know whether she had any big storylines, I don't think so. She was just like taking in lodgers. She had Curly for a bit, and Kevin as well. And then in 1988, she took on Percy Sugden, and that was kind of the beginning of her housing the old men of the street.
Yeah.
I think Percy was quite different to Norris in that... I don't know, because Percy was all very kind of military. He wanted to rule the roost. He was quite happy to have the house owned by Emily, but he was
wanted to be in charge.
Wanted to militarise it and have everything with timetables and everything. So she ended up putting up with him. I think she tried to get rid of him for a bit, and then she realised that the house was a bit empty without him. So she gave up and just accepted Percy there in the end. 1989. The factory and the community centre were demolished, and she had a sit-in protest on the building site to try and get compensation for herself and her co-workers.
I find a strongly worded letter can achieve the same results.
Yeah, well, that's what she was saying this week, wasn't it? Letters are good, emails not so much. In 1990, Emily had retired by then, so she opened a charity shop to try and raise funds for the Friends of Weatherfield Hospital. And she's kind of been doing that ever since, hasn't she? She's always talking about going and working in the charity shop. She's such a
old people
soul.
in there volunteering.
Yeah.
I'd volunteer if I had bloody time.
If I had time to do it, maybe.
No, you wouldn't.
1992, Emily had a nervous breakdown. She fell into a depression. And she was getting very confused. So there was a bit where she ended up wandering out in her slippers and ended up at a train station, which is when she then ended up going into hospital to get treated. She was fine after that, though. Interesting to think that she's had this depression. So we thought that the Steve depression storyline was the first time that the issue had been tackled, and I guess it's a bit different having like an old person and it being a bit of dementia, and so it's not exactly the same.
It sounds to me like they had a bit of muddied waters with the depiction of depression there, and also as time goes on,
I don't know.
As time goes on, obviously we understand these things a bit better, and it's easier for writers to get good information about how to portray that.
Yeah, I don't know how it was portrayed, to be honest, but it could mean that Emily could have a little chat with Steve That'd be quite nice to see, actually. If it's going to come out eventually that Steve's got depression. I'd quite like to see a little.
What, her going? Oh yeah, I had that once. I had to go to a psychiatric hospital.
Yeah, no, just to like offer support. It's like I've been through it as well, and it is possible to get better from it. Because I like the scenes with the old guard getting together, especially if there's characters that don't really have any scenes together very much, but they've known each other for 15, 20 years or so. I'd quite like to see that.
In 1994, Emily was engaged to Reverend Bernard Morton, but he ended the relationship when Percy revealed that Emily had mental health problems.
Yeah, he'd had to
So
look
the
after his.
stigma was attached to her, which still have today.
Well, Bernard's mum had mental health problems, and he'd had to like nurse her through her dying days or whatever, and he was like, I don't have to go
Slightly
through this
different
again.
sort of mental problem.
Emily's had quite a few
I know,
blokes, hasn't she, on the
she's
go?
Saucy minx.
I know, you'd never think it.
In 1997, Percy moved into an old folks' home. And also, Emily got involved in a treetop protest on the Red Wreck when her nephew, Spider Nugent, arrived in Weatherfield. And what a colourful character he was, as we remember, because we did
a character profile on him recently.
In 1999, she briefly got a job at Underworld, and she couldn't work the computer, and she resigned because she deleted the payroll. And I think she jumped before she was pushed on that one.
Yeah. I think that was just when Underworld opened, and Mike was like, offered Emily the job because she used to be his wages clerk at the Walton's Casuals. But yeah, couldn't cope with the computers.
No, too hard. In 2000, she took in Norris Cole as a lodger, so they've been together happily.
14 years, that's crazy. How does she put up with Norris for all that time?
Now, I have to take issue with this word lodger, because that's just a fancy word for housemate, which is what we would call it now.
Yeah.
In 2001, she raised £15,000 to support Spider's proposed juice bar by selling her house to Richard Hillman's company in a home reversion plan.
So this is the beginning of the big old Richard Hillman saga.
Yeah, and this is also the sticking point that we have when it came to the fact that she sold the house to Norris, because it wasn't even hers to sell in the first place.
No, it kind of ended up going back to her somehow off screen.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Corrie, you forgot what you said.
So Richard Hillman's plan was that he was going to then try and bump Emily off so that he'd be able to get like, kind of a lump sum of all this cash. So in 2002, he kind of tried to make himself more and more kind of friends with Emily, I guess. He tried to make her trust him. He was like, oh, if you've ever got any problems, just come and I'll sort them out for you. And when she was ill for a bit, he supported her. But yeah, unbeknownst to her, he'd been trying to kill her. He almost smothered her with a pillow on Christmas Day 2002. But I'm pretty sure his plan was foiled.
In 2005?
2.
Oh.
I said 2.
All right, okay. Well, he really did his best in 2003 because he hit over there with a crowbar.
That was brilliant. That was the biggest suspension of disbelief ever on Coronation Street.
I remember watching that in our a student house. Everybody was sitting on the sofas watching him, and when he hit her on the head, I definitely thought she was dead.
Yeah, because that was just... No, that wasn't... Was that when he killed Maxine as well?
Yeah, she was on the sofa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Emily was watching
there.
some scary film, wasn't she?
Yeah, Maxine was there, and then he bonked Emily on the head, and then he whacked her on the head as well, and she fell down on the floor in front of the sofa.
Yeah, Maxine wasn't there when he came in. He whacked Emily on the head. He obviously didn't intend to kill Maxine. He just wanted Emily dead so he could get the money. And then Maxine came from the party, but as we know, she should have stayed at the party because she got hit over the head and she didn't survive because she wasn't wearing industrial hair spray like Emily was.
Yeah.
How do they expect us to believe that she survived that? I don't know. But anyway, good job she did, because 11 years later she's still alive and kicking.
Still value for money, isn't she?
Yeah. We got to meet another member of her family in 2005, Frida, her deaf niece.
She got a name check today.
I know, she did, didn't she?
Now, do they communicate with sign language?
No, Frida is a lip reader.
Okay.
Frida, lippy reader.
She wouldn't like
that's her rhyming nickname. Frida was a brilliant character because she was like one of these people that show like disability isn't going to hold me back from having a normal life.
Yeah.
And she was such a cheeky woman and quite a little bit of an anti-Emily. I mean, anti-Emily, not Auntie Emily, like Tracy calls her, because she was like trying to get away with. I think she stole things once or whatever.
Naughty.
But I really liked the relationship between Frida and Norris, because in the early days, Frida completely got wound up by Norris because you know what he's like, and Norris hated Frida as well, and he thought that she was just trying to get money off of Emily and everything, and they really clashed in hilarious ways. But then she just kind of came and went for a couple of years. I don't think she's been in more than like 10-20 episodes in total, but I'd love to see more Frida. She was brilliant.
Well, they've remembered she existed, so there's hope there at least.
Yeah, well, she was there again in 2006 for a bit, because this was another Emily storyline. She met this guy called Ed Jackson at her church, and they got on pretty well, and then he dropped the bombshell that he was the guy that shot Ernest all those years ago.
So I remember this one as well.
Yeah. I think people had a bit of a problem with it at the time, because it took a little while to reveal that that's who it was, but the guy who shot Ernest back in 70 whatever wasn't called Ed Jackson, and I think they have some kind of contrived reason about him changing his name or something like that.
He wasn't really Gavin Rodwell.
But anyway, she had a big crisis of faith because she couldn't forgive him, and she thought that as you know, as a Christian, I should forgive him, whatever, because he clearly was sorry about it, and he'd was become a born again Christian again. But she ended up forgiving him. But
she did
forgive him because he tried to kill himself. But she was like, right, okay, I forgive you. But you got to move away. So I think that was quite a good ending to that storyline.
Now in 2009, Norris's half-brother Ramsay comes to stay, and this is what we were talking about. Yeah. So unlike Norris and Frida, Emily really warms to him, and she is distraught when he dies on the plane home.
I thought this was good because this again, Frida was back again for this little storyline, and this is when she and Norris teamed up, and they realised that actually they were both kind of little meddling, kind of gossipy busybodies, and they actually got on quite like a house on fire. But yeah, the romance could have blossomed, but sadly no.
And she did speak this week to Rita about this, and said again that she thinks that if Ramsay had stayed, that maybe they would have got together, perhaps. Maybe they would have courted.
It was what's the name of the guy? Is it Andrew Sachs that played Ramsay, old Manuel off of Fawlty Towers? Oh, he was great. Can't come back though.
No.
That was the last main storyline for Emily, wasn't it? Because not much has happened since.
Well, there was quite a funny storyline in 2012 when Tracy came to stay with them for a little bit, but Emily threw her out because she totally took advantage of and she was just being Tracy basically. Emily got annoyed with her and threw her out when she ruined Ernest's dancing shoes.
Yeah, and I think Tracy was probably like, oh, they're just an old pair of shoes. And it was
an old pair of crap. And she totally blew her top then, didn't she?
And then last year, we saw Emily signing over number 3 to Norris because what even started her off? Is it? I think she fell off. Didn't she fall off a ladder last year when she was doing something? I can't remember.
Well,
and then he had to look after her.
She'd be silly, wouldn't she? If she unless she wants to leave a massive amount of money to Frida and Spider, there's no reason. I wouldn't care about owning a property at that age. If I could get rid of it to somebody and get a load of money back, I would do that.
Well, it was just quite funny because Norris thought that he was tricking Emily by getting her to sign him over the house, but actually when he realised that
he was now responsible for the upkeep of the property.
Bills particularly, and it was Emily who had the last laugh at that.
Yep.
And we had does Mary live there now? I can't even. Oh, no, she's still got a home, hasn't she? She went and lived there for a bit, didn't she? But we didn't get to see any of their adventures.
That would have been hilarious, but they didn't bother.
Well, it's because they'd never show the inside of number 3. I think I can't remember when I read it now, but it was like in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been like between 20 and 30 episodes that have had a scene in Emily's house in the last 5 years. It's incredible, but I suppose it is pretty credible because they're not in it very much. Norris's home is the cabin.
A lot of time in the cabin or
the
having sherry. Yeah. So that's Emily in a nutshell.
Yeah, there was so much more that we could have said about Emily, but Emily. But there were her main storylines. There's lots of tiny little vignettes because she is. I mean, what her role is now is just kind of like being in the background for the odd scene here and there. But she's
a speaking extra.
Yeah, but she's had lots of little storylines where she's had little roles like putting on plays at the community centre and this and that,
things like that.
Supporting Deirdre when she's going through her thing with Ken. I mean, it was all because of that when she was supporting Deirdre that she's became Tracy's godmother. I like Tracy having Emily as a godmother
Yeah,
because
me too.
Emily's almost the only person that Tracy respects, but actually she treats
doesn't-
her pretty badly.
Yeah, but and Emily's like, she's not at all like Deirdre, blind to Tracy's faults.
No, she's not. But
And
I
she
think
tries
she
to be
would always
patient.
forgive her.
Yeah, of course she does, but she sort of gritting her teeth.
Yeah, she's like, I am this girl's godmother, and I'm going to take this
gosh
job seriously.
Darn it, I'm going to get her a card for her wedding, even though it's a sham.
Yeah. I'd quite like to see a scene, and I don't want to talk about Emily dying again, but I'd like to see...
You always do this with old characters. You always talk about... Okay, yeah, go on.
Eileen Derbyshire is pretty indestructible because, to be fair, she's an old girl and she is doing pretty well. I mean, she sits down in a lot of her scenes.
I'm not going to say anything.
But she seems at the moment that she could just still go on forever.
I'm not saying anything. You're jinxing it.
But anyway, I would like to see Tracy really taking Emily's heart.
Jeez
say that
Louise.
again. I would like to see Emily's death really
shake Tracy to the core.
Yes, exactly. So to help us see a bit more of Tracy's human side, which we have been seeing more of recently. Like with her just realising, oh my gosh, my Auntie Emily is dead, and
You're a horrible man.
Because we didn't see a whole lot of that when Blanche died, because that was when Tracy was in prison at that time, didn't she? I know she came in it a bit for Blanche's funeral, but I think that would be quite good to see a bit of Tracy's human side. But I hope this is a long time away, because I'm perfectly happy for Emily to be in it. Every time that Emily is in a scene, I like have a little mini cheer, because she's pretty much just a comic relief character now,
why
isn't she?
has she been in it this whole time? That is the question. That is the golden question. How has she stayed in the show all this time without really being exceptional?
She's never been a really major player. She's not been unacceptable. Unexceptional.
Unacceptable, Emily. Leave it once.
She's not a bad actress.
No, she's not. Well, she's not a brilliant actress. To be fair to her, she's not the worst actress on the street, but she certainly doesn't deliver the line that convincingly, as far as I'm concerned.
She just plays the little old lady, and ever since I've been watching it, she's been the little old lady. Yeah.
She is one of these people that is born old.
I think we see pictures of her on the internet of when she was first in, because when she first appeared in Coronation Street, she was our age.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine her like that. But looking at some of the old clips, being Miss Nugent, I mean, that's like an old woman's name already, isn't it?
So
I don't know why she's been.
Does anyone else have any ideas? Why has she been in it? Has she just gone under the radar? She just slipped past?
She's had quite a colourful past, hasn't she? I mean,
not really.
She's had lots of men. She's had the jobs. I mean, she's just like background.
Is it because she's just bland enough to not offend anybody?
Maybe.
I mean, is it that they thought she's kind of boring, no one's going to care if we write this racy exit storyline for her, so let's not bother to give it to someone else?
Coronation Street, for Coronation Street, tradition is such a big thing. I mean...
Yes.
And I think it's just
that
part
wasn't always
of that.
the case, though, was it?
No, but I mean, even after, say, 20 years or so, and all that was left was like Ken and Alf and not many others that had been in it from near the beginning. I think they thought, well, this is a keeper because it just is the link to the past.
Now, you also said that she is kind of plays a very distant second fiddle to William Roach.
Yeah.
Now, when she eventually does leave the show, do you think she's going to be remembered fondly, like other characters who, in comparison, are just a flash in the pan?
I don't think that she...
I honestly think a lot of people don't even really remember she's in it now.
No, because she's in it so little. And like I said, I love it when she comes in, because she's usually... 90% of her lines are like hilarious put-downs. Not like Blanche kind of hilarious, but just
very
little...
dry, like she's not even trying to be funny.
Yeah, just kind of moaning at Norris and making...
She's a good foil for Norris.
Yeah.
Now, it seems I'm being disparaging about her, but I genuinely like her, but I am just shocked that she's still in it. And it's are there any storylines left for her? Are they going to give her anything meaty and juicy? Or are they just, letting her wait out her role until she decides to quit?
It's difficult, because when are we saying her last role was?
Her last big storyline was probably that one about the
the Ed Jackson one, wasn't it? Because the Ramsey storyline was really Norris's storyline rather than hers.
And then the Tracy storyline and then the Norris storyline.
The Tracy stuff was only like a week or two, wasn't it? And that led to Tracy's kidneys failure thing again.
Well, is she too boring? Is she boring? I think she is boring.
She's boring, but interesting to watch.
I think that's okay.
Is she boring in the same way that Roy's boring? Because Roy's boring, but everyone loves him.
Also, Ken is boring.
Yeah, not everybody loves Ken. But yeah, she is pretty bland, but I don't know why it is that I like her.
I think she's like porridge. It's bland, predictable, yet you have it every morning because it's just there.
Nice.
Nice, yeah. And like I said, I've got nothing against her. I quite like her being in it. I'm glad she's in it. I wouldn't want them to get rid of her. I'd prefer her to be in it, but
Corrie needs more.
I don't
needs to have some
like
old characters in, old men, old ladies, and we got Rita and that's about it. Apart on the oldies brigade, isn't it?
Well, okay, yeah. So that's what we think about Emily. There's a quote here. Are you gonna?
Oh yeah, well, Eileen Derbyshire hardly ever has interviews, but there's this quote on Corriepedia from 1991. The writers have tough enough task as it is, trying to find new storylines for a character who's been in the serial for 3 decades. I just get on with it. Emily has a more colourful past than you might think. She has lots of men friends and liaisons. In the early days, when they were stuck with something to do with her, I think the writers used to say, let's give Emily another boyfriend. I've lost count of the number of men friends she's had. See, she has had a bit of a colourful past.
Friends.
Reading through all those different things, I honestly didn't realise she had so many liaisons and boyfriends and everything.
You can't coast through life just based on how many boyfriends you've had.
Would you like Emily to find somebody, a man, a nice Christian man that she can like end her days with?
What, and go off to live on a farm with Auntie Pam?
Not necessarily, just somebody that can stay in the programme with her. But I suppose that would get in the way of the Emily and Norris double act, wouldn't it? Because if there was another man that lived there, I don't think that Norris could cope with it.
No.
Because he likes to think that
he's
in charge. It's
like cats, isn't it? You can't have 2 male cats in the same house to fight.
Yeah. I would like the idea of a little wrinkly romance for Emily.
I think they're terrified of giving her too much of a meaty storyline because, number one, they think she'll get too tired. And number two, they think she might pop her clogs halfway through.
Sad, but maybe true, I suppose.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what goes through their minds.
Well, I salute you, Eileen Derbyshire, because despite Emily not being the most exciting character, you have lasted all this time, and you are the backbone of Coronation Street. I'll always remember you, even if you're not going to be fondly remembered as a main character, I suppose.
Yeah. What do you think about Emily? Write in and let us know.
There we go, Emily.
Oh,
Emily
what
Bishop.
a pair of horrible bumholes we were.
I know, so rude about Emily. Let's come back to some of those stories in a minute. We'll finish off her storyline first because she had about 1.5 years or so left of the show to go. I wish I'd held out a bit longer in the original character profiles. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, because not much happened with her in 2015. She started off the year with a bit of a clash with Billy and Sean because of Billy being the new gay vicar of the parish, and it looked like she wasn't particularly approving of his alternate lifestyle. Alternate lifestyle, as it were, but when she doesn't want anything to do with his comedy night, I think it was at the Rovers.
Yeah.
But and Sean tears a strip of her and says she's a bigot, but she says, no, I'm just not really into that kind of thing. I like to be more traditional in my
and he's like, what do you mean?
Fundraising activities.
What do you mean you're not into that kind of thing and you want to be more traditional?
She doesn't like comedy.
Yeah, I thought that was great. She's like, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care if you're gay. I just don't like comedy. What an Emily thing to say.
And there was in the summer. That was the summer that Deirdre died, so she was there obviously to support Ken when that all happened. But she was very much a background character for most of 2015, as she'd been for quite a long time before that, to be fair to her. But towards the end of the year, she decides to find out what Spider has been up to, Spider Nugent. And so she goes online, tracks him down to Peru, and decides to go out there, do a bit of voluntary work for herself. And so she goes. 2016 on New Year's Day, back of the car. I think she has a bit of a fallout with Norris, of course, before she goes. But and that was it. And we thought, well, is that the last we've seen of Emily Bishop? Because I think it was announced at the time that she was going away on a break, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we've only seen her once since. We've heard a little bit about her. Later in 2016, she told Norris to sell some of her old stuff. And then in 2018, we heard that she'd returned to the UK from Peru to look after Frida. Norris goes to visit her a few times. And then
I would really have liked to have, had a travel diary from Emily's adventures in Peru. It just seems like such an unusual place to visit. I don't know a lot about Peru, but I'm pretty sure it's a bit different from here.
Yeah.
And I just think, I wonder what somebody who, as you know, she's so traditional, she doesn't like comedy. What was Peru like for her? Was it like, was it good? Because it feels quite, maybe it's a conservative place. I don't know. Is it liberal? I'm not sure.
Pleasantly dry.
What kind of place was it for her?
I think she
what
just.
did she like?
I think she just.
Did she get on with the food?
I think she just, like many older people, decided in her twilight years, I've not really been and seen the world very much, so why not? Because that's what she ends up doing, again off screen in 2019 as well. Emily, Frida and Norris decide to go off travelling the world. This is when Norris sold the cabin to Brian and Kathy. And so they had a nice around the world trip. But we did see her on Coronation Street one more time in the autumn. It was Ken's 80th birthday, and she made a little appearance on video call, didn't she? Which was lovely. Just like one or two scenes of her wishing Ken happy 80th.
That was really nice. I like that.
Yeah, I wish it had been something that hadn't been spoiled beforehand, when there's just like little special moments like that. I mean, is it really going to attract that many people to tune in that wouldn't have tuned in anyway? I wouldn't have thought so.
It makes it more magical to watch if you aren't sure, whereas if they announce every single thing they're going to do, it feels like you're watching every time and there will be no surprises. So
yeah, exactly. It was a bit like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing, isn't it? Once we realised that when the millionaire was picked, they would announce it beforehand, then stop watching it because there's no thrill or whatever.
Yeah, you know that you're not going to get.
Yeah, you're not going to get the million. So anyway, we knew Emily was coming on. It was nice to see her again, just kind of sitting there at her home. It was probably recorded. I can't remember whether Eileen Derbyshire went into the set or not, whether she did it from home. I'm sure we said at the time. But anyway, that was it. And we found out the following year when Norris and Frida moved to the Stillwaters retirement home that Emily was staying in Edinburgh, because that's where she ended up settling. She was taking a young Chinese student couple, and that's...
Taking in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, as I said.
I know, but I don't think you said that.
She was taking them in.
You said she was taking a young Chinese couple, which
is
a bit different.
She was landlady to them,
yeah.
And that's pretty much, I think, the last we've heard of her. And she ends her episode count with 3,302, which is certainly not to be sniffed at. It's certainly, I would say, I must put her in the top 10 of characters. I should have checked this beforehand, but she's absolutely one of the most important and really longest serving Coronation Street characters. When you think of long serving Coronation Street characters, you think Ken, and you think, well, it's just Ken really, isn't it? But Emily's been in it for 95% of Coronation Street. She's been there, a presence on the street.
In 61?
Yeah, early 1961.
And it only started at the end of 1960.
Within the first few months of the programme, I remember the first appearance of Miss Nugent, I think, wasn't played by Eileen Derbyshire, but before long she was given the character, or given an actor, given a bit more of a personality, and she was there for pretty much all the time, and I don't think really she gets the credit that she deserves for that. And like you said, we certainly didn't give her that credit in the previous character profile. No, we definitely
didn't. One thing that was intriguing, listening back to that profile, was you said... and you're not going to remember that you said this because you haven't listened and I have.
I have not.
Spoiler. You said that Eileen Derbyshire was given the option, either you can join now and be Miss Nugent, or you can wait until we introduce a new family.
Oh, no, I hadn't.
And I wonder what family that was. Was it the Ogdens?
I wonder. So we'd have had Eileen Derbyshire playing Hilda Ogden. That was a couple of years later.
Yeah, I don't know what family was introduced in 1961.
Maybe they were just kind of speaking hypothetically, like,
maybe they're like, we'll make a family for you.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Interesting.
But like you said earlier, we really enjoyed early Emily, didn't we? Yeah. It's funny. She was an old lady in my mind when I started watching mid-90s, and she just carried on being a bit of a granny figure throughout my time watching, and then when you started watching, so she was a little bit boring. It's fair to say. But I think that was kind of her thing, wasn't it? But she also did have a bit of a spark to her. And some of the storylines that she did were some of, you know, she gave these excellent performances. Like when she had her breakdown in the early 90s, she was absolutely superb. All of the stuff with Ramsay coming along, which we've watched just recently. And she was brilliant in that. But she has always felt like a little bit of a side character, and I think even back in the early days of Corrie, she was a bit of a side character because she didn't always live on Coronation Street, did she? She was just, you know, a character in the shop or whatever. But Corrie would be a very different place without her, and I did really, really enjoy seeing young Emily and seeing shades sort of, you know, it was still the same character. She was still very straight laced and you know,
Yep.
But she also was good with the comedy as well, not laugh out loud joke telling comedy, but you mentioned earlier like the mannequin parade episode. Did we mention that at all in the character profile? Do you want to talk a bit about that then?
Oh, she was just in charge of, they call it a mannequin parade, but we would call it a fashion show now, because in the early days fashion models were called mannequins, which is really weird. But she was in charge to promote the Gamma Garments. I don't know if it's called Gamma Garments then, but she was trying to promote their new sort of line.
Range, yeah.
And so she had a bunch of Corrie characters. I can't remember who.
It was Irma.
Definitely Irma was one of them, who had to quickly
remember who the
change
other one
behind the scenes, and there was a bit of a snafu, and they couldn't sort of get their clothes on properly. And so she had to ad lib, and so Emily was standing there, and she was trying to narrate this mannequin parade that was going very, very slowly and badly. And so she started saying, "Thank you very much to the people that provided the hall that we're in, and the electricity was provided by Weatherfield Electricity Company."
Yeah,
it was brilliant.
It was
She was
really,
just like really
really
organized.
funny.
She's really, and watching her older episodes makes you appreciate her more. It's a shame it didn't really. It's a shame it didn't really translate to people like us who started watching sort of in Emily's twilight years. But if you watch her from the very beginning, when she was younger, you really appreciate the character more. But I think, you know, as you get older, you start to change. You start to what's the word?
Your tastes change.
Your tastes change, but you also appreciate older characters, and you kind of feel a more affinity to those characters. Whereas when you're younger, you vibe more with the young ones,
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
you? So yeah, it's very interesting. It also makes you wonder as we grow old, will we start to appreciate Percy Sugden more? Or
Well, I really
or
like
Tyler?
Percy anyway. And,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And seeing Emily kind of being the landlady to Percy during the 80s was funny, and just him and his very set in his way kind of ways, and her rolling her eyes at him and everything, and she was great. She was very good at being very stoic and having the gravitas that was needed when he was
Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with the cat.
yeah. Oh dear.
I think she's a bit hot, maybe.
Yeah. You know, I mean, she was very good at commanding attention. She had a great presence when the
Gravitas,
character
yeah.
needed to be.
Yeah. She was dignified. Yeah, I really like Emily, and
If you got a telling off from Emily Bishop as a character, you kind of
consider
felt
yourself
it, didn't you?
dressed down.
Yeah.
So-
I loved her.
So there we go. That's Emily Bishop Nugent. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you got any comments, leave them below. Let us know. What did you think of Emily, and what are your favourite Emily moments?
Have you changed your opinion on her like we have? Let us know.
We'll never know unless you tell us.
No, we don't. We won't know at all. Should we go?
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.